In today's video, we are going to go over how to set rider sag. We've gone over a few things on bike setup so far, but setting up your sag is probably going to be the biggest improvement that you can make when it comes to setting up your dirt bike. Sag is literally how much the rear end of your bike sags. There are two different types of sag, static sag and rider sag. Static sag is how much your bike sags on its own weight. Rider sag is how much the bike sags with you, the rider, on it. If you have a lot of sag, the rear end of your bike sits lower. If you have little sag, the rear end of your bike sits higher. Now, this makes a huge difference to how your bike handles. When the rear end of your bike sits lower, it's going to make it feel better for long, wide open cornering, almost like the bike is more stable. Good for wide open desert riding, but bad for tight motocross riding. When the rear end of your bike sits higher, you are more on top and able to steer a lot faster. Ideally, you want to be right in the middle, and you can make very small adjustments to fit your riding style. Most people will be good just having it set where their owner's manual says it should be. My bike is currently set at that right amount of sag, but I am a heavy rear end steering rider, and I feel like I want to be able to get my back end out with more ease. So I'm going to slightly stiffen up the shock, causing the rear end to sit up higher, making it easier for me to steer with the rear end. The reason why everyone should set their sag is because everyone's weight is different. Maybe your bike is set for a 150-pound rider and you're a 160-pound rider. So you need to adjust it to fit your weight and get it in the right spot. I usually check and adjust mine about once a month because I've been lifting weights and eating more trying to get a little bigger. So as my weight increases, I increase the stiffness of my shock. Get a marker or a piece of tape to mark your measurements. Get a tape measure to measure with, and something to loosen the lock nut with. Any type of punch and hammer will work, including a long screwdriver, and a buddy to help measure while you sit on the bike. First things first, put all of your riding gear on as it adds extra weight to you, and that's the weight you have when you ride. Then, mark a spot on the rear fender straight above the axle, so you know where to set the tape measure. Next, measure the distance from your rear axle to fender. Then, see your owner's manual to find out how much your bike needs to sag with you on it. Mine needs to be sagging 105 millimeters, which is also 4.13 inches. So, the distance from your front axle to rear fender should drop 4 inches when you sit on the bike. Mark the distance from your axle to rear wheel on a tape measure, while your rear wheel is still off the ground. Now, lift the bike off the stand onto the ground and sit on your bike in a natural position with all of your weight. The goal is to have it sag down 105 millimeters. So, if you have to, loosen or stiffen the shock until you reach a sag you're looking for. You can adjust the shock by loosening the top lock nut that just ensures nothing will move while it's tight, and then loosen the bottom lock nut to tighten or loosen the spring. Sometimes if your shock is clean, you can just twist right on the spring to adjust it, or just tap on the little grooves that are in the lock nut. One full turn equates to around 3 millimeters. So now all that's left to do is fine tune until you find that number you're looking for. Static sag is how much your bike will sag with its own weight. My bike calls for 35 millimeters of static sag. The reason why you want to check your static sag is it's a good way to find out if you need a lighter or heavier spring. If your static sag is really high once you have it adjusted to your rider sag, it means you're loosening the spring too much and you need to get a lighter spring. If your static sag is too low, then you're tightening the spring too much and need to get a heavier spring to fit your weight. Most of the time your stock spring will be fine for your average size rider, but don't be afraid to upgrade to a different spring to fit you. Because trust me, getting your sag dialed in is the best thing you can do.